Okay. Today, my guest is Professor Rajneesh Narula. I'll keep my introduction short to maximize our time with him. In the next 30 minutes or so, we'll talk about Rajneesh as a person, Professor Narula is a thought leader and an esteemed scholar, and finally, as a mentor to many PhD students and junior faculty. For the sake of time, I will skip many of his accomplishments and give you a very quick snapshot. Professor Narula was appointed as Honorary Officer of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire in recognition of his services to business research. He is also a Fellow of the Royal Society of Arts, Manufactures and Commerce. Rajneesh was Editor-in-Chief of the European Journal of Development Research and Editor of Multinational Business Review. He is currently an editor of JEBS. He regularly acts as a consultant and advisor to the European Commission, UNIDO, UNCTAD, and OECD, World Bank, as well as a variety of other international organizations, governments, and consulting firms. He is the author, co-author, or editor of 13 books, one of which is a widely popular IB textbook, and more than 100 articles and chapters. He is a regular commentator on business and economics issues on BBC, World News, Sky News, TRT World, as well as a variety of print and online publications around the world. Thank you, Rajneesh, for joining us.
Thank you.
First question, what did you want to become when you were a child?
Well, I think that like most children, my first inclination was to be a policeman. But we lived near a police station, and they looked very impressive in the uniforms. And of course, immediately afterwards, I wanted to be a railway, working in a railway station because they also look very smart. But I actually did not study business or economics. My first degree was electrical engineering. Driven by the fact that I prefer to write books. I wanted to be a journalist or a writer, but my father made it very clear that I had to do something in the sciences, so I took electrical engineering as my first degree.
And when was the earliest moment of awareness between domestic versus foreign?
Well, I think, to be honest, it's a kind of definition of my life. My parents are Indian, and my father moved to England when I was 2, and so the family moved to England. It was just me and my parents, and so I have always grown up. So I grew up in England till I was 7, and then we moved to Nigeria. So I've actually never been in a place where I'm in the majority. I've always recognized the idea that there were multiple countries and multiple cultures, and there were things you did at home that did not happen in school. The massive, so kind of the idea of multiple cultures is part of my life, I would say.
And what's something not many people know about you that you wouldn't put on your CV?
I was an anarchist when I was a undergraduate. I had very strong opinions about things, and I enjoyed taking part in demonstrations and organizing demonstrations.
Really?
Yes. So, I won't mention any of these things, but I might still be wanted for various anti-government activities.
If you stop doing what you're doing today, what would be the second best career path?
Well, I think like a lot of people, I have always thought if I have the time, I will write a novel, and I have 1/3 of a novel in my cupboard. Well, nowadays it's not a cupboard; it's on a memory stick, and I keep thinking I should go back to complete this book, but it doesn't seem that important, and also I realize that I will be one of many hundreds of thousands who have an incomplete book in their cupboard. So I'm not sure I want to necessarily, go there and then discover that I am a mediocre a novelist after having been a fairly successful academic.
What's the book about?
It's about it's about being an accidental African. Uh, and since I spent the most important years of my life from the age of 7 to the age of 23 in Nigeria, um, and always struggling, kind of trying to please my parents on the one hand, who are Indian and who have very strong Indian culture, and then going to school and being amongst Nigerians, and always my parents will talk about, that we are going to go home, we are going back, as most expatriates have this tendency to talk about, and going to school and wanting to do things that my classmates were doing and my friends were doing, but not being approved of at home. So living in between these two societies, and in a way, there's a book by Graham Greene, um, which kind of inspired me because it describes a man who comes from who travels, a British man who comes to Africa, and he becomes too African to go back to England, but he's not African enough to be accepted in Africa. It's called The Heart of the Matter. And so this is sort of a story, my own story in a way, and also the story of the book. Um, so it's semi-autobiographical. Um,
This is interesting. So where is home for you?
Home, I think, is where my stereo equipment is. So if you have my single most expensive, my most important asset is my music collection. I own. I mean, I'm still old school, so I think and now everything is on digital format, but I have probably something like 10 or 15,000 CDs now in digital format, and every room has a stereo system, and I own, I would say, yeah, the most important thing in my house, and you will rarely see me without at least one pair of headphones in my bag. If I go on a vacation, I would take two sets of headphones in case one stops working.
Wow, interesting. Let's talk about regrets. What is one thing you wish you would have done that you didn't?
I'm actually one of those people who I don't think I have many regrets. There are people I could have said sorry to, and if I had had the opportunity to make amends for the things that I might have said, I'm quite a direct person, and I have hurt people's feelings. And I think this is the thing that keeps me up at night sometimes, that I feel ashamed of some things that I might have done or not done, or I should have said. These are the things. So, in a way, I would like to be able to close all these books and apologize to the people I should have apologized to. But I don't think I have any major regrets. I think everything I've done has brought me here. Everything I didn't do also has brought me here. And I have almost a perfect life. I mean, I'm blessed in many, many ways. I've been so what do people ask me sometimes, what do I believe in? And this is and this, I think, it's the generosity of strangers and the kindness of my friends. And I have been very, very lucky because strangers have been very, very generous with me, and my friends have been very kind. And I think that this is the most important thing I can say. I have no regrets because people have helped me, have saved me, have come to my assistance when I've needed help. And I'm immensely grateful for all of these things. So, very few regrets.
Last question in the personal segment. What are you most proud of?
This is a very good question. Um, that I have been able to give back the kindness that I have received, and I'm not a burden on society. I think this is I've made the world a little bit better, I believe. I may not, it may be just pride and hubris, but I like to believe that the world is not worse off because I have been alive.
That was beautiful. That was beautiful. Now I'm switching to research segment. Um, so imagine you're stranded in a pub. You sought refuge in this small neighborhood location, and people don't really read your work. They don't know who you are. How do you explain your research to people who don't follow your work?
So I explain, and this has actually happened to me. I normally explain that I try to understand how international companies affect economic development and how and when they have positive effects on society and how and when they have negative effects on society.
What do they say? What did the people say when you explained
Well,
it?
then I explain there are two types of people: those who think that the multinationals are making the world a worse place, and they bring up Shell and they bring up various, Exxon and Union Carbide or whatever. And there are other people who think, that this is a communist plot to destroy the power of globalization. So there are two types of people. So it depends on the kind of pub that one goes to.
Um, now, something related to my research. Well, what are a few of the omitted variables in IB research? The things that we haven't covered enough that we should.
Okay, so I think that I'm not an empirical person, but one of the things that I really dislike about international business is the fact that we try to make everything simple and oversimplify things. We want to capture things in three or four in a very simple causality, because social sciences are quite messy. By definition, we are trying to understand the behavior of human beings. The most fundamental unit of analysis is the individual. The economic actor, the basic economic actor is individual. And I think this is a very Schumpeterian idea, but the basic unit is an individual. And trying to understand human behavior, essentially, that is what we are trying to do. And what has happened in the field of international business is we have tried to simplify this to two or three variables, whereas in fact, human beings are quite idiosyncratic. And it is very hard to simplify things to the point that it becomes silly. We don't, there is absence of complexity. We assume away so much complexity that our analysis is sterile. It has no meaning. I'm not saying this is true all the time, but a lot of analysis has no meaning because we try and bring it down into elegant equations.
About creativity in scholarship, I would like to ask you, what does your mind think of when it wanders freely in a state of idle curiosity? What do you think about?
So I think it is this complexity really that bothers me. Is that there is a certain amount of simplification that is good, but there's a question of when does it become oversimplified. And what I realize is that everything is connected to everything else. And as we are as human beings connected to everywhere. As you say, you have students who know what I do, and I don't know them, but we are connected because they're what I do or what I don't do, uh, perhaps as an academic, affect other academics. But not just that, the person down the street is affected by me. The multinationals are affected by me. I mean, as an individual, I have a multiple ripple effects on society. So I think that it's understanding how these energies can understand these consequences, that every action has a consequence. And this still fascinates me that we don't even understand. We try to control for the consequences. We try to be like physicists. Action has reaction, but an action has a reaction, and then it has multiple secondary and tertiary effects, and it has effects on people who are not even in the space.
Mhm.
So really, this fascinates me about the world we live in, that that the ripple effects are so invisible and so far-reaching. It's like the butterfly effect, and I really find this fascinating. It's also scary if you think about it, that the butterfly wings, in China will affect me here, and I don't think it's an exaggeration. There are it just, but it's hard to comprehend that the power of a very simple action can have long-term effects on society.
Rajneesh, where do you see the IB research in the next 5 to 10 years evolve into? What's the next big question?
Well, I think that personally, I am a bit disappointed with IB, and from my point of view, because there's a tendency for us to start looking at our own work. That is, international business references international business, and this is a sure way, like it's like inbreeding in royal families. Uh, it has the same outcome. It's, gradually, the amount of intelligence starts declining, and the quality declines. So we need more interbreeding, and we don't have enough. We are getting into the silos that I really don't care for. IB has gone down this route that you study one area, you really don't ever consider the interdisciplinary effect of what you're doing, and it's fascinating to real. No, of course, it's again about human beings. This let us study market entry, or let us study innovation in multinationals, but innovation in multinationals has implications with other fields like sociology and anthropology and biology even, and understanding these other fields requires time, and we must make an effort to make these bridges, but not enough people are making these bridges. So for me, the more bridges we build with different fields, the more interesting it will become. But unfortunately, we are now in this silo business where we have really specialist journals, and the crossbreeding is becoming less and less.
I mean, you're in a power position. You're in a position to sway these ideas, right? You're as an editor in
Yeah.
JIBS, you're in a position to shape something. So, where do you see the evolution of IB research uh,
No.
go into?
Where I want to take it, not where it is going. So my earlier comment is about where it seems to be going under its own steam. Where I would like it to go is to acknowledge that politics, political economy is a fundamental actor in for multinationals, for international business. I would like it to acknowledge that business actions have social outcomes. And if I see anyone who does such cross-disciplinary work between political economy, sociology, anthropology, and the behavior of firms or behavior of managers, this is very interesting to me. And I encourage as much as possible people taking a cross-disciplinary view. So if I see a paper with a cross-disciplinary view, I will make a special effort to see if I can get it to be a better acceptable paper. So that's um, my real inclination is. I think sociology is missing in what we do. Anthropology is missing. Uh, Even nowadays, understanding the cutting edge of development. People talk about development as if it is a business issue, but it isn't about business issue. Understanding the leading lights of society like Amartya Sen and Piketty and Banerjee and Duflo. These are all brilliant people around, but we are stuck with these old-fashioned ideas. And if we can bring new ideas into national business, this would be good.
If you could invite four people to a dinner table, dinner party, who would you invite?
Living or dead?
Both.
Okay, so that is a very good question. Um, so John Lennon,
Okay.
for sure. Since I have four people coming for dinner, John Lennon, I think I would like to invite Banerjee. He from the Banerjee and Duflo. Um, I think I would like to talk to Amartya Sen. Um, and I think we should, if we are going to have some, I think the work, the I'm a great fan of fiction as well. I read a lot of, I try to read a lot of novels, and I would like to invite Wole Soyinka. He's a Nigerian Nobel Prize winner from the 1980s.
Beautiful.
If I can have a fifth person, it will be Nelson Mandela, but I think everybody says that.
Let's switch gears to mentoring advice portion. What was the best advice you received for your career?
So first, I will mention my boss. For a brief period, I worked in IBM in Hong Kong, and I was late submitting a project. I was supposed to write this program. Anyway, it's a long story, but I didn't meet the deadline. I promised it on a deadline, and I missed the deadline. I didn't realize that my boss had promised it to his boss, and it had gone all the way to the chairman of the board. And so on Monday, when I came after having worked the whole weekend, and my boss was waiting for me, he said, "Where is it?" I said, "I couldn't finish the program because it's too difficult." And I was 23 at the time, 24, something like this. And he was so angry with me. And he said to me, "You know, Narula, we are paying you for results, not excuses. If you can't cut it, you need to go back to counting ball bearings for the Nigerian railway." So, which is a job I did for a brief time, and not the ball bearings per se, but yes. So I really learned my lesson from that nobody wants your excuses. People only care about your results. A life where you explain what you could have done. This comes to your earlier question, regrets. Either I did it or I didn't do it. There is no I could have done it if I had the opportunity. I lost the opportunity or I didn't have the opportunity. Both are my own fault. So there's no reason for me to sit there, and there's no reason for me to say did try something and I failed. That was the first really good advice I got, and it changed my life because I realized nobody cares. And I went to do a PhD, and one of the pieces of advice that I got from, well, not advice, but John Dunning, I was Dunning's PhD student, and I asked him, he was about 65 when I started working with him, and he would be, he would keep writing every month. He would write a paper and he would give it to me to go and find the data or edit it, or I was his research assistant, and and every month he had something new. So I said, "Why do you bother to do so much? Because you are, you're John Dunning. You're famous." And he said, "I feel when I talk to my young people, I feel really I need to keep up with them."
Mm.
So, and I didn't understand, of course, at that time. And but now and his young people at that time, he was talking about Mark Hassan and Peter Buckley and John Cantwell. These were his young people, and he felt somehow threatened that he needed to maintain the same pace as these guys were making. So, and then this is 25 years ago, and now as I go through, I realize that I need to listen to young people, and also I don't feel necessarily threatened, but they have something to share with me, and they keep me going. They come with ideas. They're like, "Okay, but this is an idea," and I like, "Wait a minute." Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not. Like most ideas, some of them work, but keeping up with young people. Always people have something to teach you. Everybody comes to you with a gift in their hands.
What are the top three mistakes or pitfalls that junior faculty and young PhD students make early on in their career?
Um, the For a PhD student, I would say the first thing is uh, nobody cares what's in your brain. They only thing that we care about is what you can write down. So people come with great ideas, and the world is full of good ideas. Um, if you can't write it down without any references, you should be able to write down your idea without any references in a logical, structured way. And it doesn't matter whether you have the references or not. Don't obsess about having all the references. Focus on the simple, pure, reasoned argument. The references you can add afterwards. Um, I think this is my first advice I give PhD students. Don't obsess about something. Secondly, you have to have a good conceptual idea. Don't go mining data unless you have a good you can mine data to look for ideas, but thirdly, read the classics. I have actually realized this as a PhD student that people just read the most recent paper and then they assume that they have read everything by reading the most recent paper. But if you go back and read the original Karl Marx and the original Schumpeter and the original Lewis or whichever one it is, actually, there's a lot of insight which has been missed. You're seeing it with new eyes. And I think half of my papers have come out of reading a classic paper or a book. And suddenly a light bulb goes on in my head and wait a minute, this is actually really, really useful. And a lot of inspiration has come from just reading some things which don't look, which are 1930s, 1920s, whatever it is. Read the originals, and you find there's so much information to be had that a lot of people have missed in the last few years.
Well, you're going to write a new syllabus, a PhD seminar syllabus. You can only assign one reading, one paper, one book. What would you assign? One single item.
Hmm. It's a PhD. It's a PhD in international business
Yeah.
course. Okay. It's a very good question. Okay, the most significant paper in general, I have to say that changed the way I thought about everything was reading the original course article of 1937. If I was to recommend an article, it's the course 1937. Everything you need to know about international business starts from there. It doesn't start with, I know this will upset people, it doesn't start with Dunning, it doesn't start with Heimer. It's all you need to know. Starts with the course and Schumpeter. So that would be my view. If you're going to read one book in your life, I would say uh, I think I would like to say Karl Marx, um, uh, but it's a very difficult book to recommend to anyone to read. Um, yeah, I think that so it would be a punishment to tell somebody who has not got 1 year to dedicate to the task of understanding Marx. Uh,
It's a very difficult book, actually. The concepts are very elevated, and
yes.
every sentence takes about a week to understand.
So the
But
way around that is a very good set of lectures recorded by Harvey, who's in I think in New York somewhere. Forget his first name. He has about 15 hours of lectures on Marx. So if he does it, he goes through the book chapter by chapter, and he explains individual sentences and explains the construction of the sentence and what it really means. And it just makes the whole thing. It's worth taking a month or two of one's time to do that.
Beautiful. Rajneesh, what is one last question I should have asked you but didn't?
I think that you've asked me a lot of very good questions, and I think that what will I work on next is a.
There you go.
So what I am nowadays, I've been obsessed with for the last 5 years, is realizing that actually most of my work was wrong thus far, and it has become my own work has become increasingly irrelevant. And starting from the investment development path and onwards, and it's time to reconsider this and return again to first principles. So multinationals don't have a significant effect on economic development. This is my observation. And this is anecdotal right now, but I would like to spend the next 5 to 10 years explaining what's wrong with my original ideas from 25 years ago.
What's the first sentence of this paper?
What's that?
What's the first sentence of this paper?
I think that the idea would be it would be a book. It wouldn't be a paper. I think that this is a big idea where I would like to explain everything from the beginning. And it will take me, it'll take me 5 years to put this book back together, I think.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time. I learned a lot. I'm sure the audience will agree with me. Thank you, Rajneesh.
Pleasure is mine. Thank you.